Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Robbie Triano of SiriusXM joining the show to give the instant reactions to the most meaningful poll in America, the preseason Associated Press poll. No games have been played. Most practices are closed for most college teams, so we really don't know who's doing what. But we have opinions. The media does, generally speaking. So do we, Robbie and I, about where teams should finish. Just your immediate reaction, Robbie. I'll put it up here to the top 25 poll and just your thoughts generally. Let's go there first. Actually, before we do the poll, your thoughts generally about the AP top 25 preseason edition.
They will never change. So if your team isn't in it, you should just give up on the season. K-State, sorry, dark horse, my butt. You're not in it anymore. No, it's exactly how I picture it would go. The top teams are at the top: Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia. They're very good. For the Big 12, I don't think this is a great representation. I think what the AP Top 25 is saying is you're not going to compete for a national championship this year. There's no way you're going to compete, maybe even for the college football playoff. So that's not great. But for me, I think that everything is as planned right now. USC being in number 14 is hilarious. They may be really good, but I just love seeing OU fans get really annoyed online. And the thing that warms my heart, 23, 24, 25, all future Big 12 teams.
Yes.
That's some great representation right now. But for right now, I can't get too upset because I think, especially for the Big 12, there's a lot of change in this league. There's a lot of unknown and uncertainty in a lot of different positions because we either lost a lot or just things are just new. So for what the Big 12 is concerned, I think it's accurate for right now. But right now, I think it's pretty chalk when you go to the top 10.
Yeah, so you look at this AP poll, and obviously you mentioned the three Big 12 teams are Oklahoma, Baylor, and Oklahoma State. And what this tells you and tells us and should tell everybody is that, there is such a crossover in these polls, Robbie, between looking back at last year and looking forward to this season, right? Because you and I have talked about a team like Oklahoma State. Like, I'm not sure how good they're going to be to start off, especially. Like, they might be pretty good, but they're losing their best receiver. They're losing their running back. They lost all their defense. They lost their defensive coordinator. And, once again, they do have some guys back on both sides. But guys we love like Malcolm Rodriguez, right, and Colby Harvell-Peel are both gone. For Baylor, we talked about them so much. They're switching quarterbacks. Their running back is gone. Their Tyquan Thornton, their number one wide receiver, is gone, right? Their two best defensive players are gone. But what they do last year, they won the Big 12. We all love Dave Aranda all of a sudden. Once again, I'm not knocking these teams, but there's this crossover between like Alabama at number one, right? And I know they're always number one, but think about how good Alabama is this year. Think about how we know it's going to be Alabama and Ohio State versus the field, basically. And then think about kind of square that with what we know about, a team like a Baylor, like an Oklahoma, like an Oklahoma State, like I mentioned. Like, there's a cross between predictive and what we saw last season, I feel like. And it's tough to hit, but I'm not sure we always hit the mark with the same people.
Yeah, and for like the case for Alabama, it's like we kind of know Bryce Young's really good. For Ohio State, we know CJ Stroud is really good, and that's why when I look at the Big 12, you even look at the quarterbacks, like the only starting quarterback who started game one last year that is returning is Spencer Sanders. And we all know about Spencer Sanders. So just think about it. You have 9 new quarterbacks compared to who was starting next year, unless Hudson Card starts. But I really don't see that happening right now unless something crazy happens. So, I just think this is a league that's going to have to prove itself, especially in the Big 12, because there are so many new things, especially coaching-wise. Like when you look at Oklahoma, a whole new staff. You look at Baylor, they have the returning coaches, but, Blake Shapen, we know he did great in a lot of different games. Like when he stepped in, he did a good job, but there's nothing to prove that he can do that over the course of a 12-game season. There's nothing to prove that. Spencer Sanders is Spencer Sanders. Texas, I honestly think that if the news of Isaiah Neyor and the other injury didn't come out, I bet the votes were placed before then. But I think they're a top 25 team before that. But now that this is happening, you just kind of have to wait and see mode. But I just think, from what I could tell from this is there's just a lot of confusion about where to put the Big 12 just because you can't point at Oklahoma and be like, you know what, top 5 team. How?
Right.
What about that says that they're a top 5 team? I don't even think they necessarily have a position group that is the best in the Big 12. Like, I don't think like they don't have the best offensive line. They don't have the best defensive line. You could say they could have the best quarterback, but if Dylan Gabriel goes out, do they have the best QB room, RB room? They do not. So it's like I can't say that Oklahoma necessarily has the best out of anything. So that's why I think, like, for me, one of my bigger complaints, and I voiced this, and obviously OU fans are just mad at me now. It's like, why is Baylor not ahead of Oklahoma? And obviously it's just like a 1 point difference, but why are people voting Oklahoma over Baylor if it comes to the Big 12 team? Yes, it is Oklahoma. Yes, historically they are great. Yes, they have talent in the weeds, but they replace everything. They replace the coaching staff. Yes, they have some major key coaches that are back, but Baylor has a lot more consistency. I know exactly what I'm going to get with Baylor. There's more things I can point, be like, you know what, that's going to be really good. Oklahoma, I don't know what exactly I can point at and be like, that'll be the strength of their team. It's more like I have to wait and see. So why are we giving Oklahoma the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah, I think it goes to this point, Robbie, that I think they're going to be less good teams or as many really good teams this season as there were last year. Because you start looking behind and be like, all right, well, who should you put ahead? And like, I struggle with that too. Like, who would you put ahead in a lot of these situations, right? I mean, NC State, I'd probably jump them ahead. USC, you mentioned we haven't seen much. Michigan State's going through some transition there, especially because they lost their best offensive player and their defense was essentially red zone roulette.
They're going to be elite. Okay, John.
Yeah, I mean, well, Robbie, there was a whole lot of red zone roulette on that defense last year. That was kind of the name of the game for them, right? Great. Yeah, and then so you think about Miami's a lot of hype. Pitt obviously getting a new quarterback. Wisconsin, Arkansas, right? Kentucky. I mean, there's like this year, besides those top 2, there's a chance that Georgia's probably going to reload, but like their defense probably won't be as good as it was last year, right? Their offense might be a little bit better, sure, but I mean, one of your main guys, Jermaine Burton, went to Alabama, right? And we're not even sure if a guy like Eric Gilbert can even stay on the field, stuff like that. Clemson, I mean, they're number 4, Robbie, and they might make a quarterback change pretty early in the season. We've got no idea what's going to happen. Notre Dame obviously saw last year Marcus Freeman's had a really good job recruiting, but is that a top 5 team? Tyler Buckner, a quarterback. A&M's up there, but A&M went 8-4 last year, right? And we don't even know who their quarterback is yet. And they got a lot of talent, but it's a lot of young talent. So Utah probably going to be really good again this year. Michigan, but you see what I'm saying? Like, is this Michigan team better than last year's? I don't know if we have the depth, like we did in the past. Because think about last year. Like last year's Oklahoma team, despite whatever you want to say, is better coming into the season than this year's Oklahoma team is. There's no doubt to me about that in my mind. I think last year's Oklahoma State team was better than this year's. I think last year's Baylor team is better than this year's. I think the Big 12 is kind of a good example of these teams probably aren't going to be as good as they were last year. And so I'm actually curious, like, how many really good / great teams are we actually going to have this season?
Oh, it's actually a really good question. And it's funny because Greg McElroy, he does something with ESPN, and his biggest question at the Big 12 was, can a team get to 10 wins? And at the time I was like, that's like, I don't know if that's the biggest question, but when I think about it, it's like, yeah, it's actually a really good point, because I don't think there is a clear team that is a top. Like last year, we all thought, okay, Oklahoma has it. And obviously things didn't go their way, but they still had amazing talent. Just look at the NFL draft.
Right.
Like they had great talent. So this year I think is more like a, hey, we're going to be really fun. We're not going to play for national championships, but when you tune in every Saturday or whenever you tune in, the Big 12 is just going to be a really good time and really competitive. Is that good for the overall narrative about this conference? I think to the casual fan, no, because there's not a major team in the top whatever. So they're going to be like, this league stinks. But I really do think it's going to be a highly competitive team. But also when it comes to ranking the top 25 in general, I think it's just an impossible task, like even before this. But now the reason Alabama and Ohio State are at the top is because they have the most set pieces and the most pieces that didn't enter the transfer portal. I don't know how a team can really, or how a reporter can be like, you know what, that team is going to be better, even though they lost majority of their team to the draft and they just added a bunch of players. I don't know how it's going to fit. So I think it's very difficult to rank, especially in a preseason, just because I think the roster turnover and like what rosters look like every year is just so different now because you can just plug and play whenever you want, or you can just lose players just because. So it is. That's why I think the top two teams are also just the best. But
Yes.
I think it's a crapshoot, and I think that this top 25 is going to look the most different at the end of the year than it is right now. I think we're going to
Yeah,
have a
I'm with
complete
you on that.
change.
I think that's where I'm at, and so I'm wrong on my assertion of like, do we have as many good teams? Maybe they're just different, really good teams. But
Right.
I mean, that's the big question here. I just think, kind of looking, it's just kind of a weird year. It feels like a lot of turnover for a lot of these schools. I mean, talk about teams like NC State and Pitt, right? I mean, we feel like really really good about those schools, like kind of the highest upside, the kind of highest spoiler potential. But Pitt's replacing quarterback, and it's like NC State. I mean, when's the last time NC State went to an ACC championship game? Right? I mean,
Right.
they've beaten Clemson. Like, how many times they actually gone pillar to post and gotten the job done? So I think that's kind of the big questions here. Let's talk specifically about the Big 12 schools. First, quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline and BetOnline.net. You got some new fun odds coming out, folks. You can bet on things like who will record more INTs this year? Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, or CJ Stroud? OU fans, go and place your money on Caleb Williams. We all know that you want to do it. Go, once again, today, BetOnline, BetOnline.net. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. All right, so number 9 is Oklahoma. And Robbie, you made a great point. When you think about the units, right, you think about the different, the offensive line and the wide receivers and the running backs and linebackers and defensive line. They might not have the best in any of those categories. I think they're the best quarterback in the league, in my opinion. But they might have the best combination of all of them. And also, if you were to ask which Big 12 team is most likely to end up in the top 10 at the end of the year, it's Oklahoma. And I know you say, wow, what a prediction, but it's because that schedule. It's because the
Oh
schedule is
yeah.
so favorable. That's why. And also there's room for it to grow, of course. But an Oklahoma team with a pretty easy schedule, or relatively speaking, easy schedule, you got to like your odds. And also your odds just got better because two really important players for Texas have just gone out.
Yeah, and I think if they had this team, that team that they had last year, this year, with the schedule they have, I think it's easy to say, you know what, that's a national championship contending team. Like, these are their home games. Kansas State, obviously Texas is at the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
Kansas, Baylor, Oklahoma State. Your hardest games are at home.
All
I
of
would
them.
consider Baylor and Oklahoma State at home, and then let's see the games that you are away. Nebraska. I'm not.
Believe it when I see it, Nebraska. Believe it when I see it.
TCU, Iowa State, but before Iowa State, you have a bye. So I
Right.
would consider your hardest away game, you have a bye right before West Virginia and Texas Tech. Your hardest games are at home, and your toughest and your easiest games are on the road. So it's like, yes, I consider this a very easy path for them, and I think it sets up for them. Also, like, what a cupcake, like, non-con, UTEP and Kent State. Obviously, Nebraska is much more difficult, but yeah,
Right.
if this was a ranking based off, who I think is going to be at the top by the end of the year, great. But if this is a ranking based on, like, the quality of the team, I think right now, I cannot put Oklahoma number 1. Can I put them number 2 in my
So would
Big
you
12
put,
preseason
if
poll?
you would have put Baylor, you would put Baylor ahead of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Okay.
think they have a lot more, like, continuity.
They
Yes,
do.
Blake Shapen is a quarterback, but he's at least played for Baylor, and I can actually see tape of him with a jersey on that says Baylor on it. Running back is a whole different issue, but I trust the offensive line, and I trust Jeff Grimes more than anything. We had him on our show last week, Big 12 Today, and he was just, like,
Yeah.
listening to him. Like, he was just so optimistic about this offense because I watched a lot of tape of last year with Gary Bohannon, and it's just like Gary had to do so many things with his feet, and I don't think that is what Jeff Grimes wants out of his system. Like, you look at what he did with Zach Wilson, and he was telling us, like, the reason I love my system is not only does it help with the running game, but also it makes everything better passing wise. So, like, Blake Shapen is so much more accurate as a quarterback and can do more things with his arm. So I just see this offense just, like, growing. I really do see a lot of good things positively for Baylor. Weapon wise, question mark, but I do believe in that system more than, I think Jeff Lebby is great, but he just installed it. Like I get Dylan Gabriel has been there, but there's still 10 other people on the field for that offense. So that's where I would give Baylor the upper hand. And also like defensive line, 1A, 1B, them or Oklahoma State, in my opinion.
And offensive
line, I think they are the best. And honestly, like linebacker, like Dylan Doyle is a beast. Matt Jones is a beast. And they do have players returning that can fill that Jalen Petrie role. I think Al Walcott, that's what I heard from a lot of people. Is he going to play that position? I voted him on my first team. If he gets there, I'm going to brag about that a bunch. But I just think there's just a lot of like, I just trust Baylor more right now just because I've actually seen it and they just won the conference.
It feels like we forgot about the, and I think Dave Aranda did a great job learning from that first really bad season. I totally do. I think we do forget about that. Like there can be issues. I think the idea that it's just all smooth sailing now for Dave Aranda moving forward, and he's just ultimate coach guy, we're good to go. Right. There are always hiccups. There are always challenges. And so I'm wondering if breaking in a new quarterback with some questions in the running game, wide receiver is going to be one of those things that kind of presents a challenge while this defense, because ultimately I think this team is going to be a team that relies on its defense at the end of the day. They want their calling card to be their defense and the offense to get the job done when they're asked to do it. I think that takes time. So they're the team, Robbie, that I would say the most I would put outside the top 10 on the season. And the team that probably has the highest ceiling if everything goes right for them. I think because they're already so good at the lines of scrimmage, and if shape and the thing works out, like they're the team at the end of the year you probably don't want to play. If all goes according to plan, there's a whole lot to get to at that point. The other one I bring up here is I would, if I was voting before the Isaiah Nair thing, I'd put Texas ahead of Oklahoma State. I've gotten slander for this
ballsy.
already.
I can't do that. Man,
this team has such an well, here's my point. If we're gonna do this with A&M, why aren't we doing this with Texas? I know A&M went 8-4, but like, who has the better quarterback? Who has the better running back? Offensive line, I know is a big thing. Skill position players. I mean, I'll take the Texas wideouts over A&M's every day of the week. Sure, defense probably a little bit better, but like, talent-wise, still on defense, there's a lot to like from what Texas has. So if we're going to be doing that, I mean, we got to give Texas respect, especially, if we're counting transfers. Now, I know Isaiah Nair, that does hurt, man. I was really excited for the year he's going to have. And obviously, Jai Hall is having his issues right now with parking tires or, tire, what are they called? Tire boots. So once again, at this moment in time, maybe I'd take a step back from this because losing an offensive lineman and a wide receiver, not good for Texas. But if I were to have voted on this before, actually, I don't know how Texas is not in this, in my opinion. I think they should be in. And if all things were equal beforehand, I would have put them over Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State's a little overrated this year. So your thoughts on no Longhorns of Robbie's something. So no Longhorns and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And I know I'm gonna get killed for this Texas back thing over and over and over again, but like this group, talent wise, what they have is a little bit different. Robbie, are you prepared? Are you ready to tell me I'm an idiot? Because I think I can tell it's coming. He's still looking. Also, the last one we got to hit on is they received votes, but Kansas State getting 14 votes for the top 25. Texas was at 164. It's actually their team number 27. Tennessee was 180. They were team number 26. Kansas State laying in the weeds, probably were Kansas State fans. I mean, I know there's going to be a portion of you out there that are really upset that you're not in there, but like, I think you'd rather be laying in the weeds. We saw what happened with expectations last year for a team like an Iowa State. They're a burden sometimes. So I prefer to be K-State not ranked than K-State ranked going into the year. Robbie, what were you going to say about my Texas and Oklahoma State thought?
I wish you could see what was happening to my computer. It was just hilarious. My mouse was going up and down, and I just couldn't click unmute. It was terrifying. So about Texas, though, like, I don't think I can put them ahead of Oklahoma State just for I just can't do that yet. And I think the reason why they are voted so back, like in that, I don't think any AP voter wants to get burned again. I think
That's 100% what it is. You're right.
They are tired of voting in Texas just to look like the idiot at the end of the year, and everyone is tagging like old Tate's exposed, and it's just like I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, I think people voted before this injury thing, but Texas just has to prove it. Like they just have to do it. I agree.
I'm fair. It's fair. It's fair.
I honestly think if a team were to have the highest ceiling in the conference, it would be Texas. But how many years in a row are we going to say that? If everything works, Texas has the talent because, they recruit the best. They have
but
the
this
best.
team, Robbie, is like, this is not the Sam Ehlinger is going to run the ball 20 times a game team. Because that was never going to work. You were never going to win 11, 12 games like that. It just, they won the 1 year of the Sugar Bowl year. I forget how many it was. But that was not sustainable. This team, in terms of talent, has a top 5 wide receiver in the country. They have one of the most talented quarterbacks. And once again, I know he doesn't play in the field. One of the most talented quarterbacks in recent memory. They have the best backfield in the conference, period, full stop. And I mean, once again, the receiver stuff is really, really sad. And on defense, it's not like, Alfred Collins and DeMarvion Overshown. They've got guys who are talented, Kendrick Coburn. They've got guys that we know for a fact are talented. And they don't need all of them to play their potential. I'm just saying, number one, I wouldn't have Oklahoma State this high. I would have Texas at 20.
Yeah.
And I'd have Oklahoma State lower down. That's all. I think if you put Texas closer to Wake Forest, it makes a lot more sense, right? So I'm not saying Texas should be top 15. I'm saying they should be top 25. And I think Oklahoma State is getting that big bump from last year.
No, I agree with that. I do think Texas top 25. Do I put them ahead of Oklahoma State? Oklahoma State has some absolute dudes on the line of scrimmage, like Brock Martin, Colin Oliver. Yeah. People forget last year Oklahoma State led the conference with 38 sacks. 38. Number 2 was Baylor with 24. That is, and they returned their top 2 sack getters. So that's where I think Oklahoma State, I don't think the defense may drop a little bit, but I think they're going to get after the quarterback. And I'm not necessarily high on a lot of offensive lines in the league besides Baylor, maybe Oklahoma, maybe Kansas State. But even then, I'm treading on murky waters here. And that's where I'm Oklahoma State can be a real problem on that. Yeah. Do I trust Spencer Sanders? No. Do they have a running back like Jaylen Warren? No. But I also didn't know that until Jaylen Warren started playing for Oklahoma State last year. So that's where I am. I'm a little bit higher on Oklahoma State just because I think defense is really going to carry this league, especially I can believe in Quinn Ewers. I have seen his high school tape enough to trick myself into thinking, oh man, that guy's going to be good. But I have no idea. And obviously they have a tough road with Alabama week 2. And that just is tough. Do I believe they have the best offense in the league? 100%. I think they have arguably the best running back. You can pick your poison, Deuce Vaughn or him. I think they have the best wide receivers. They could possibly have the best quarterback, but I cannot look past their defense. I ranked the top 10 pass rushers as a collective in the league, and Texas was number 8 when it came to people who could get to the quarterback as a team. So that's not great. And I voted them number 3 in my preseason poll. I wish I voted them number 4 just because I think I should have gave Oklahoma State a little bit more credit.
Let's talk about the other teams, the incoming teams. Also, do you hold on? Let's do Kansas State first. Do you agree with my point on Kansas State? Rather be unranked, laying in the weeds, if you will, coming into the year.
I think they should be ranked.
I mean, they should be.
Everyone has been saying, they're the dark horse team. Yes. If they really are your dark horse team, why aren't you voting them? Huh? Everyone says, that's the team you got to watch for. Why are they not even 25? That's crazy. Everyone wants to say, oh, they got Deuce Vaughn. They got this amazing defense. How is a team with 6 Big 12 selections on the first team not make the top 25? I don't get it. They need to prove it, but what are we doing?
Let's talk about the incoming teams. So 3, Cincy, Houston, and BYU, and also receiving votes, 27 votes, is UCF. And that puts them 30, 31 if you were to flesh out the rankings, whatever. This is not relative to their league, Robbie. This is just people saying Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU have built really good teams this year. And so if we were to fast forward this a year, like or a couple, whenever it is, right, that we see OU and Texas depart, this would be 5 teams in the top 25 from the Big 12. That'd be really good representation. So I think it just speaks to like these teams are ready for the challenge of a big league. I think Cincinnati. I think Houston's the one that we're all like. We don't talk enough about Houston, because especially because their coaching staff is really well paid, really well taken care of, and they also have been there before. So, your thoughts on just seeing those 3 schools there? Because look, the AAC champion this year is going to come from one of the new schools. It's just a matter of the championship game is probably going to be 2 of the new schools. It's just a matter of which one of those schools, wins that all.
Yeah, I mean, this is just amazing PR. Like Brett Yormark looks at us and he's just drooling, like, yes. More things I can use to bash the Pac-12 with. Ha ha ha. So I think that's great for us. Am I an expert on like who is like very good for each team? No, I've heard amazing things about BYU, and it's just like Cincinnati is going to make
Robbie, if you want to learn about those teams, we have team previews here on Locked On Big 12 for each of them. Go check out our team previews tab.
I like Jake too. I listen to you guys. Jake is nice as well.
Jake Hatch is strong. He's strong.
Yeah. But I mean, this is just great PR for the entire league. Cincinnati is not going to be as good as last year, but like that is an amazing, like if going from that to number 4, like you're going to have a drop off, but still great. And obviously Houston, I mean, we're going to see them a lot in a lot of Big 12 games when it comes to early in the year. So I'm looking forward to that. Prayers to you, Texas Tech and Kansas. I think that's going to, I mean, this just looks great. And if you pull up those rankings again, if we include them into the Big 12, I mean, there's no other group of 5 team in the top 25, which is weird to think about.
Right.
It's just like, wow, okay, well, the Power 5 really just dominates everything. They did before, but now it's like, okay, now we officially, this is almost the death of the group of 5.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if there's, is there more consideration for those teams considering how? I mean, look, they were all 10+ win teams last year, so that's number 1. That are bringing back a lot of, Cincinnati is bringing less what we have thought, but I think we're all. I mean, what they win like 22, 23 games in 2 seasons. I think we're all pretty on board with Luke Fickell. BYU obviously 10-win season last year. Houston was right there on the cusp. Just got just met a better team in Cincinnati there in the championship game and had a really nice bowl win against Auburn. So like, look. I wonder if there's some consideration there because that they are joining the league. So that's something that'd be interesting. Once again, I'm not a pro rankings guy. I understand why we do it, right? Oregon being number 11. Good Lord. Guess who they play week 1, guys? Number 3. So what looks better? 11 versus 3. I think all of us as media members, if you're a voting media member, you kind of subconsciously do it. Just be like, man, I'd love to see a 3 versus a 10.
I wonder if there's lobbying. I wonder if ESPN is lobbying like some reporters come on. We need, I want a big ranking.
Preferred ranking would be Oregon.
We need to stop lobbying in college football.
That'll never end in this sport. All right, Robbie, appreciate you and your time. Where can people find all of your sizzling takes on Twitter?
Big 12 Radio, SiriusXM channel 375 is where you'll hear the show that I work on. If you want the sizzling takes, right down there at the Triano Kid on Twitter. It is time for the season to be coming up. We're about a little less than 20 days, which is interesting. And I will be dropping my top 20 players in the Big 12 this week. Top 20. I spent about an hour or so ranking it, debating. We'll probably be talking about it on this, but it is I'm intrigued. It's going to be a really, really fun year, and I can smell it. It's coming.
We're less than 2 weeks away from Division I football being played. I mean, it's coming up. Week 0 is coming up. So no Big 12 in week 0, which I'm actually fine with. But all right, Robbie Triano, appreciate your time, and I'll be seeing you in roughly 30 minutes.
Awesome. See you, Josh.